Three men walked into their urologist's office on the same day. All three had a PSA of 6.4. Man A was 52 years old. His doctor said, "This is concerning for your age. I want to move quickly." Man B was 64 years old. His doctor said, "This needs careful monitoring. Let's look at the complete picture." Man C was 74 years old. His doctor said, "At your age, with your prostate size, this number is actually within expected range. Here's what I am watching for instead." Same number, same day. Three completely different clinical conversations. Man A left scheduled for further testing within 2 weeks. Man B left with a structured monitoring plan and 3 additional data points his doctor wanted to track. Man C left reassured, but with a specific set of markers his doctor said mattered more than PSA at his age. His wife, sitting in the waiting room, had accompanied her husband, Man B, and overheard the other 2 men talking afterward. She said on the way home, "The same number means completely different things depending on how old you are." "How did we not know that?" He said, "Because nobody explained it." That is exactly what today's video explains. What PSA actually means at 50. What changes at 60. What doctors look at instead at 70 and beyond. And why the number alone, without age context, tells you almost nothing useful about your actual risk. Before we continue, quick reminder. This is educational information only, not medical advice. PSA interpretation always requires your doctor's clinical judgment applied to your complete health picture. And if you want a free age-specific PSA reference guide, what the research says about normal ranges at 50, 60, and 70 plus, drop the word age in the comments right now. Now, starting with what PSA actually means at each decade, beginning at 50. Man A was 52. PSA 6.4. His doctor moved quickly. Here is why. PSA naturally rises with age as the prostate gradually enlarges. But at 52, that natural enlargement process is still early. A large PSA elevation at this age is less likely to be explained by prostate size alone. Research from Stanford University, published in the Journal of Urology, established age-specific PSA reference ranges based on data from thousands of men. For men aged 40 to 49, a PSA above 2.5 warrants attention. For men aged 50 to 59, the threshold rises to 3.5. Man A at 52 with PSA 6.4 was nearly double the age-adjusted reference range for his decade. That gap matters significantly. At this age, doctors look most closely at 3 things beyond the number itself. PSA velocity, how fast it is rising. A PSA of 6.4 that appeared over 2 years is different from one that appeared over 6 months. Family history. First-degree relatives with prostate cancer lower the threshold for action at this age more than at any other. Digital rectal exam findings. At 52, any firmness or asymmetry on exam combined with elevated PSA accelerates the timeline significantly. The key insight for men in their 50s, a number that might be monitored carefully at 68, may require faster action at 52. Age compresses the decision timeline, not because the number is worse, but because the expected baseline is lower. Man B was 64, PSA 6.4. His doctor said, "Let's look at the complete picture. Here is what that picture includes." By the early 60s, the prostate has typically been enlarging for 10 to 15 years. Natural PSA production from benign tissue is meaningfully higher than at 52. The Stanford age-adjusted reference range for men aged 60 to 69 rises to 4.5, reflecting this natural increase. But at this age, context does more work than the number itself. His doctor looked at 4 things alongside PSA 6.4. First, PSA density. His prostate volume on ultrasound was 72 grams. PSA 6.4 divided by 72 gives a PSA density of 0.089, below the 0.15 concern threshold. Reassuring. Second, free PSA ratio. His free PSA ratio was 24%. Above 20% suggests benign enlargement is more likely driving the elevation than cancer. Third, PSA trend over 3 years. 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4. Rising, but at a rate of approximately 0.1 points per year, well below the 0.75 annual rise that research from Johns Hopkins identifies as clinically significant. Fourth, prostate exam findings. Smooth, symmetrical, no firm nodules, no physical findings adding concern. Man B's doctor said, 3 of 4 markers are reassuring. We monitor with a clear plan. That is the complete picture at your age. The key insight for men in their 60s, PSA 6.4 at 64 is not the same clinical event as PSA 6.4 at 52. Context, density, free PSA ratio, velocity, and exam does the work that the number alone cannot. Man C was 74, PSA 6.4. His doctor said, at your age, this number is actually within expected range. Here is what I am watching for instead. This is the part most men over 70 have never heard explained. The Stanford age-adjusted reference range for men age 70 and above extends to 6.5. A PSA of 6.4 in a healthy 74-year-old with a large prostate falls within that range. But the framework at this age shifts in a second important way. Research consistently shows that in men over 70, the balance between benefit and risk of aggressive investigation changes significantly. A 2012 recommendation from the United States Preventive Services Task Force, later updated in 2018, noted that for men over 70, the harms of overinvestigation and overtreatment of slow-growing prostate findings often outweigh the benefits. This does not mean ignoring PSA after 70. It means what doctors look at changes. At 74, Man C's doctor focused on 3 markers specifically. PSA velocity over the past 2 years. Any sudden acceleration, rising more than 1 point in a single year, would change the conversation immediately, regardless of the absolute number. Symptoms: new difficulty urinating, pelvic discomfort, or bone pain in a man over 70 with elevated PSA triggers a different pathway than PSA elevation alone. Overall health and life expectancy context. A 74-year-old in excellent health with 15-plus expected years of healthy life is managed differently than a 74-year-old with significant comorbidities. The clinical calculus includes both the prostate picture and the complete health picture. Man C's doctor said, your number is within expected range for your age and prostate size. Your velocity is stable. You have no concerning symptoms. What I am watching for is a change in any of those 3, not the number itself. The key insight for men over 70. The question shifts from, is this number too high, to has anything changed that requires a different response? His wife asked on the way home from that waiting room, so what does every man need to know regardless of his age? The answer is 4 markers that doctors look at alongside PSA at every decade, with different weight given to each depending on age. Marker 1, PSA velocity, rate of change over time, more predictive than any single number at any age, rising more than 0.75 points per year, is the research-established threshold for clinical significance, from a Johns Hopkins study that followed men for 15 years. Marker 2, PSA density, PSA divided by prostate volume. Below 0.15 is generally reassuring at any age. Above 0.15 combined with other factors adds concern at any age. Requires prostate volume measurement, either from ultrasound or MRI. Marker 3, free PSA ratio. Above 25% generally reassuring, below 10% raises concern. Most informative in the PSA range of 4 to 10, which covers the majority of men in active monitoring. Marker 4, digital rectal exam findings. Smooth and symmetrical is reassuring at any age. Firm nodule or asymmetry changes the conversation regardless of what the PSA number shows. None of these four markers alone tells the complete story. Together, interpreted in the context of age, they are what research-informed urologists actually use to make decisions. Man A at 52 needs to understand your age-adjusted baseline is lower than you think. A number that gets monitored at 65 may require faster action at 52. Velocity and family history carry the most weight at this age. Man B at 64 needs to understand. Context does the work your number cannot. PSA density, free PSA ratio, velocity, and exam findings together create the complete picture. Ask for all four at every appointment. Man C at 74 needs to understand. The framework shifts after 70. Absolute number matters less than change. Velocity, symptoms, and overall health context become the primary decision drivers. A stable, elevated number in an otherwise healthy man over 70 is a different clinical situation than the same number rising rapidly. His wife summarized it on the way home better than any research paper. She said, "The same number means something completely different depending on how old you are, how fast it is changing, and what else the doctor is seeing. Why does nobody explain that at the appointment?" Her husband said, "They probably assume we already know." She said, "Nobody told us, so we didn't know to ask." Man B went back to his next appointment with 4 specific questions. Can you show me my PSA velocity over the past 3 years? What is my PSA density based on my prostate volume? What is my free PSA ratio? And what does it suggest about the source of my elevation? Given my age specifically, what does this number mean in context, and what would need to change before you would recommend further investigation? His doctor spent 28 minutes answering all 4. At the end, his doctor said, "These are exactly the right questions. You now understand your own monitoring better than most of my patients do." He said, "I should have asked them 3 years ago." His doctor said, "Most men don't know to ask. Now you do." Imagine sitting in that waiting room. You have just heard your PSA number. It is higher than the general reference range, but you know something most men in that waiting room do not know. That number, without your age, your PSA density, your free PSA ratio, your velocity, and your exam findings, tells almost nothing useful on its own. You walk into the appointment prepared, you ask about your trend, your density, your free PSA ratio, what your age means for how that number is interpreted. You leave with the complete picture, not just the number. That is what Man B's wife understood in a waiting room conversation that lasted 5 minutes. 3 men, same PSA. 3 completely different conversations. Now you know why. And now you know how to make sure your next appointment is the right conversation for your age. Share this with one man over 60 who has been hearing his PSA number for years and has never been told what it actually means for someone his age. And drop age in the comments for the free, age-specific PSA reference guide. What research says about normal ranges at 50, 60, and 70 plus, with the 4 markers explained.